We all make mistakes. We all make mistakes. We all do stuff that we regret. I still do stuff that I regret. I still do stuff that I regret. For instance, I thought I was live on YouTube just now, but just kidding. Now you only get the second half of the show. Ha, 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 ha. Isn't that funny? No, it's actually not funny, but that's what happened. So there's only going to be half of Clutch with Keon Rose on YouTube today. I apologize for that. But no, we all do things that we regret. And I wanted to talk about this the other day because it's a very fascinating story. And I think that it's interesting because of Ray Rice and his wife. The two things are really not that related, but hear me out, okay? Ray Rice, not in the NFL anymore, due largely in part to the fact that he punched his then fiance, now wife, in an elevator in Atlantic City, New Jersey, which, again, it's the middle of the night in Atlantic City, New Jersey. The two of them should have just been at home. Like, nothing good can happen in that place at that time, right? And you talk about wrong place, wrong time. Atlantic City, New Jersey, at any time after 11:30 p.m. is the wrong place at the wrong time. Nothing good can happen there, okay? I suppose if you're gambling, you might win a little bit, but outside of that, nothing good can happen there. Ray Rice knocks his wife unconscious. And to me, the thing that bothered me the most wasn't just that he hit his wife, but that he hit his wife hard enough to knock her out. You need to realize who you are, man. You play football in the National Football League. Every time someone hands you a football, you're running away from tanks. These tanks are trying to kill you. You just have to realize, like, okay, this woman that I'm about to hit, I can't hit her. I can't hit her because she's tiny compared to me. She's tiny compared to me, okay? And the situation isn't the same necessarily, but it's just a case of a guy losing control and not realizing his size. That's Blake Griffin. That's Blake Griffin. He's the perfect person for all of this. Blake Griffin is enormous. He punches a Clippers equipment manager. And does he get suspended? Of course he can't get suspended because he injured himself in the process. He broke his hand, which, again, why don't punch people with your bare hands? Blake Griffin reportedly punched Los Angeles Clippers equipment manager, breaking his hand. He was already out for injury, and he's going to be out for injury a little while longer. He's going to be out a little bit longer. And I'm just thinking, because I'm looking at a picture of Blake and the equipment manager. The equipment manager looks to be like my height. I'm 5'10". Well, Blake Griffin's like 6'7". And he's huge. You just got to know, I can't hit this guy. I will destroy him. I mean, we've all seen Blake Griffin. He's an enormous dude. You just can't hit people, okay? You just don't put your hands on people. No matter what size you are, but depending on your size, you should be more careful. Be more careful you don't hit somebody on accident, much less on purpose. You don't put your hands on people, and when you're huge and enormous and they're not, you're going to do more damage if you do. I mean, you just can't do it. You know, we all do stuff that we regret. For instance, Nick Saban. Didn't think I was going there, did you? I made fun of Jim Harbaugh for his insistence on sleepovers. I think it's hilarious that a grown man and college football coach has singled out some talented high school football teens and decided to have a sleepover. Jim Harbaugh having a sleepover with your kids. Can you imagine that? Because I can't. What are they going to talk about? Khaki? Anyway, Jim Harbaugh's having sleepovers with kids. He's posing in photos. You know, kids aren't allowed to pose with you, so Jim Harbaugh posed in the foreground and the kids were in the background. They didn't pose with him. They just posed in a picture that he happened to be in. All of the silliness. These are the things that college football coaches are willing to do for recruits. Like, desperation is something that is real. And college football puts that desperation at a high level. I would do almost anything for my girlfriend. She is amazing. I would like to keep her. I would do almost anything. There's a level of desperation there that, to me, makes sense. It starts to be a little bit more ridiculous when you start to see what great lengths college football coaches are willing to go to recruit high school players. So there's video of Nick Saban. First off, I like what he's doing. I'm not shaming Nick Saban. Not that he's got anything to be ashamed of. He's got a national title. But the video that exists of Nick Saban doing the wobble is possibly the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. Nick Saban trying to scoop up the next crop of talented high school freshmen is taking it dancing. And I'm like, at what point does just winning a national title and walking into some kid's house and going, I can win you a national title, when was that not enough? When was that not enough? Can you imagine Bear Bryant doing the wobble? The Darryl K. Royal doing the wobble, like all of the great college coaches in football history, having sleepovers and doing dances to get kids' attention. I mean, it's really shown you how much the college football landscape has changed. It has really changed. The people with all the leverage, it's the kids now. Like, you are just so desperate for commits because your job is on the line constantly. You're not allowed to have 2 or 3 bad seasons in a row. Even if you've won a national title, that national title gets forgotten really, really quickly. You are constantly looking for the next batch of kids. You're constantly looking because the moment that you don't have a good recruiting class and you slip up a little bit, even Nick Saban could be gone. Even Nick Saban could be gone. It's crazy. I mean, you win 4 national titles in 7 years. To me, you should be unfireable. If I hired Nick Saban, he wins 4 out of 7. He could never win again. I'm not firing Nick Saban. You just don't do it. But it's today's day and age. People would. People totally would. You know, and it's because Nick Saban's not just winning because he's got 1 or 2 great players. He's winning because he's fielding whole recruiting classes that are great. And he's coaching great, and he's making all the right decisions, like that onside kick in the national championship game. You're looking at a guy in Nick Saban, even he could be fired, and now he's out on the recruiting trail doing the wobble. And it's fun, and it's funny, but I just think for a minute. Just imagine, go back in that time machine and go back in Alabama's history. Go back to Bear Bryant and imagine Bear Bryant doing the wobble. Would that have ever happened? Would it have happened? Just think about it. It's gotten ridiculous. We're doing dances. We're doing sleepovers. You know, sleepovers. We're doing sleepovers. I get hung up on that one a lot just because I'm a 17-year-old, 18-year-old. The last thing that I want is Jim Harbaugh in my house sleeping on my floor. I understand that I don't speak for everyone, but that's the last thing I want. What are we going to talk about? Khaki? You know Harbaugh's not firing up the PlayStation with me. At least I don't think he is. Unless Jim Harbaugh has ascended to some level of cool that even I'm not aware of. You know, come on, man. What are we doing? What are we doing? And, golly. To me, that's the most ridiculous thing. You're listening to AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. I'm Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me today, giving me just a little bit of your time. I have I have some stories that are kind of silly. They're just kind of kind of oddball stories, that I like stories that are weird and stories that are strange. That's one of the things that I am probably most interested in doing when I'm not looking up sports online. That's my other favorite thing to do, is to just find weird stories that actually happened and read them. And here's a story that's just bizarre and crazy. There are rumors that the Clippers want to trade Chris Paul. That's a wild and crazy story, is it not? Chris Paul is arguably the best point guard in the NBA. Here's the discussion on whether or not you should trade Chris Paul. No. You shouldn't. You shouldn't trade Chris Paul. That's and conversation's over. Okay? You shouldn't. That's not up for debate. That's not up for discussion.
I'm not having it.
Not having it. Chris Paul, you can't trade him. He's untradeable. He's if you're going down the list of best point guards in the league, I mean, you go Chris Paul. Somewhere in there is John Wall, Russell Westbrook. Like, those guys are not tradable. Steph Curry. Okay? So Chris Paul is the second best point guard in the league right now, because I don't think anybody's playing at a higher level than Steph. You want to trade Chris Paul?
I'm not having it.
We're not having that, man. Are you serious? So that's a weird story. Okay? And then here's another weird story that I saw it, and I was reading Deadspin.com. Deadspin.com collects a lot of great and interesting stories, and they do this. They're very sarcastic. Don't read Deadspin at work. You don't have to. You don't need to read it at home. Okay? There's a lot of swearing. I think your boss might be a little interested in what it is that you're reading. Don't read Deadspin.com at work. But Landon Donovan, U.S. soccer star, has a son. His son is born, and his son has the most, according to Deadspin.com, his son has the most Game of Thrones name ever. Talon Bartel Donovan. Talon Bartel Donovan. That there, if that is not a fantasy novel name, if that's not a fantasy novel name, what is? What on earth is? Because Talon Bartel Donovan. Do athletes and famous people name their children weird things on purpose? Do they? Because George Foreman had the thing where he would name his daughters and sons. Like, all of his sons were named George, and all of his daughters were named Georgia, and George Foreman had a few kids. It wasn't like one or two. Like, he named a bunch of kids George. He named a bunch of kids Georgia. Why does that happen? Why do they do that? Why do they do that? The Kanye West named his daughter North. It's Northwest. That sounds like a hilarious joke. That, like, don't do that to your kids. Michael Jackson names his son Blanket. Blanket? I mean, come on, man. Like, I understand the going for, the Johnny Cash, a boy named Sue situation. You want to toughen the kid up. You name your kid Sue. They get made fun of their whole life, but then they're tough by the time they're an adult. That could be it. But when you name your daughter North, I don't think that you're going for, I want her to be a tough woman. I just think that you thought it would be cool for her name to be Northwest. And that's about as far as you thought. Like, there was no extra thought process going in there. You just thought it would be cool for your daughter to be named Northwest. And I got to tell you, I don't know what you're thinking. I don't follow you on that one. I really, not about it. Not about it. I'm not going to be able to join you in that endeavor there.
I'm not having it.
Not having that either, man. What on earth is this? We just name our kids Talon Bartel Donovan. Because what, you wanted to replace Prince Joffrey? Is that what it was? Man, it's just real. It's real rough. And speaking of Game of Thrones, because we talked about it a little bit yesterday, I kind of want to dig a little bit deeper into the story because there's a lot of political intrigue. There's a lot of backstabbing. We were running out of time on the show when I brought it up. So now I'm giving myself more time to talk about it. LeBron James got David Blatt fired. And I'm not saying that nobody batted an eyelash, but we were all like, yeah, that was bound to happen anyway. He got his coach fired. And I understand that the NBA is a players' league, right? All the players have all the leverage. You've got guaranteed contracts, which means even if you don't live up to anything like the money that you were paid, you make it all. You get all of that money. Players have the absolute advantage in the NBA. People, if you're good enough, you can force trades. That doesn't happen in the NFL. You don't get to force your way out of anything. That doesn't happen in the major leagues. But in basketball, one star can have so much power. And LeBron James is the biggest star in basketball. Steph Curry notwithstanding at the moment. Okay, and the ability to stage a coup and get your coach fired, that's some Game of Thrones type nonsense there. Okay, Landon Donovan's son, Talon Bartel, is not interested in meeting King James of the North. You don't want it. You don't want it because he'll get you fired. David Blatt was not hired to coach LeBron James. David Blatt got hired to coach a bunch of young guys, and then LeBron decided to come back. And from that moment onward, David Blatt, the clock was counting down till that dude got fired. The clock was counting down till that dude got fired. And when, the story started coming out about how LeBron and Blatt didn't like each other, you knew it was over. It just, we didn't bat an eyelash, though. Like, this is the most normal thing. This is today's NBA. You're Carmelo Anthony and you don't like being in Denver, you can force a trade to New York. You're Darren Williams and you don't like being in Utah, you can force a trade to the Nets. In retrospect, that was a terrible idea. Well, and Darren Williams did worse. Darren Williams got Jerry Sloan fired, then forced a trade, then proceeded to stink in New Jersey and now Brooklyn as a Net. Darren Williams is a shell of his former self. And you're just like, what happened? But you can do that in today's NBA. You're Chris Bosh. You can get a max contract from the Miami Heat because of the vacuum of LeBron James. Like, you can get paid way more than you're worth in the NBA. Doesn't happen that often in the NFL. And if it does, teams can cut you and restructure your deal. Like, really, like, only the Raiders and the Redskins and the Browns seem to constantly just get suckered into stupidity and contracts that are awful. Okay, like, only the Redskins would walk into Albert Haynesworth's contract willingly. Only the Redskins would do something like that. Maybe even the Dolphins too. Like, that's like 4 teams who are just constantly stuck in stupidness. But mostly in the NFL, nobody does that. You just don't get caught in these deals where guys are not performing. Okay, you're not stuck with Lance Stevenson's deal if you're the Clippers. If that's an NFL scenario. But somehow in the NBA, you can get your coach fired. And nobody really bats an eyelash. We're like, okay, it was only a matter of time before they fired Blatt. And we just all accept it and walk along like this is fine. I don't think this is okay. It's not okay. Seriously, I understand that it's a game of politics. You're LeBron James, you're Michael Jordan. What you have that a lot of other players in your position don't have is leverage. Okay, that you're one of the top 5 players to ever play the game. You're going to have leverage that nobody else has. But it's one thing if Cleveland didn't have a coach and they consulted LeBron and said, LeBron, what coach would you like us to get? What is your recommendation? Who fits best with your playing style? That makes sense. You consult your best player. LeBron James has an affiliation to Clutch Sports. His agent is That's his agent, okay? And they hired Mark Jackson, and they tried to get the team to get Mark Jackson to be their coach. LeBron already did the thing where he got Tristan Thompson more money because Tristan Thompson is part of Clutch Sports too. And you're just like, man, they just have to pay this money. They just have to go ahead and obey everything that LeBron says. He can stage a coup. I think that's the real reason why he left Miami. And the thing is that he left Miami, and LeBron's gotten a whole lot smarter at this. And everybody that ragged on LeBron and booed LeBron for how he left Cleveland and how he arrived in Miami, you created this monster. You created this monster because the guy that showed up in Miami was just trying to have fun, was just trying to have championships and win them with his friends. Then he said not one, not two, not three, not four, and y'all killed him for it, and he's gotten more subtle. LeBron didn't go back to Cleveland for the story. That's how he painted it. LeBron went back to Cleveland for the power. He went back for the power. He couldn't pull any of this stuff when Pat Riley was down there in Miami. He wouldn't have been able to do it in Miami. You don't stage a coup with Pat Riley. He's too mean. It's never going to work. But you can do it in Cleveland. He's got Dan Gilbert by the little toe. Dan Gilbert's going to do whatever he wants. Because Dan Gilbert can't risk losing LeBron twice. You can't lose the best player of a generation 2 times. You might lose him once. You definitely can't lose him twice. And LeBron James is playing Dan Gilbert and the Cleveland Cavaliers like a fiddle. I've never seen anything like it. And are we really just okay with this? Like, the next collective bargaining agreement, the owners are going to have to try and get some more power back. I almost always exclusively root for the players. But I'm looking at LeBron James and how this situation is being handled in Cleveland, and I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not on the players' side. Not this time. You guys have too much power. Never root for the billionaires. I never root for the billionaires. I don't feel sorry that Dan Gilbert has to spend money, but I do feel bad when a guy like David Blatt never really got a chance because LeBron James didn't like him. And Blatt's going to have his opportunities other places. Okay, he's going to have his opportunities. He's a good enough coach. I think a lot of people, the general consensus is he never got a fair shake. So David Blatt's going to have his opportunities in other cities. You know, he can choose to jump in right away this season, or he can choose to wait until the end of the season, which is what it sounds like he's going to do, and wait for that opportunity to open up there. But it's unbelievable to me to see a guy like David Blatt never really get a fair opportunity because LeBron just didn't like him. You're listening to AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. I'm Keon Rose. Remember, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Stay clutch. I'll see you in 24 hours.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Fox News Talk 1240.
AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio with your Hot News Now update.